Hello and good afternoon to one and all. Myself, Dr. Sneha Vaswani. I would like to present this very interesting case on Ludwig's angina. I had received this call in the last 1 month while I was on my emergency duty. It was around 6 or 7 p.m. in the evening. This case had its own challenges in planning the intubation as well as the extubation. Dr. Pratiksha will be presenting the entire case, and I would like to thank Dr. Sarang and Dr. Forum Gandhi. Dr. Sarang was the surgeon under whom the patient was admitted, and Dr. Forum Gandhi, who was my call for help. Dr. Pratiksha.
Thank you, Sonali ma'am and Sneha ma'am. Hello everyone. I'll be talking on Ludwig's angina from intubation to extubation. It was a challenge to us. So what is Ludwig's angina? It is a rapidly progressing necrotizing cellulitis which affects the posterior oropharynx, submaxillary and the sublingual spaces. The most common etiology of this is the dental extraction. It basically occurs because of the second or the third molar infection. It also occurs because of the poor dental hygiene, patients who smoke a lot, who consume alcohol. The most dreaded complication is that it can result in airway obstruction and death can occur due to the airway compromise. The initial treatment for this is antibiotics. If the patients do not respond to antibiotics for a course of 4 to 5 days, then we have to go for surgical intervention, that is incision and drainage. The most common organism which results in Ludwig's angina is the Streptococcus species, the Staphylococcus and the Aenorrhoeus. So this is the pathophysiology of the Ludwig's angina. It starts with pericoronitis, that is the inflammation at the crown level, at the gingival level. It spreads to the submandibular area, then to the sublingual space, then via the genioglossus muscle, it crosses to the other side, then on the other side of the submandible area, and via the lymphatics, it spreads to the submental space and then goes posteriorly to the tongue, resulting in laryngeal edema. If it spreads down to the deep cervical fascia, then it results in mediastinitis. So this was a case history which we have noted in the emergency. The patient was 62-year-old male having pain and swelling in the left side of neck since 15 days. He was having fever of around 100 to 101 degree Fahrenheit on and off. He did not have any comorbidities except recently diagnosed diabetes and was on OHAs. On examination, we saw the pressures were around 140 by 90. Heart rate went to 110 per minute. Saturation was, SpO2 was 96% on nasal prongs with 2 liters O2. And he was tachypneic with around 22 breaths per minute. So this was our patient. There is a mass which we can see. It's a huge mass which is extending right from the angle of the mandible to, it is covering the whole of the sternocleidomastoid up to the sternal notch. Mouth opening was hardly 1.5 finger mouth opening, and there was all inflammatory signs were present, that is redness. 1.5 finger mouth opening, restricted neck extension and flexion, and lower 4 dentures were present. On investigations, his counts had raised. There was neutrophilia. WBC count had raised to around 21,000. Glycosylated hemoglobin was 10.7. CT neck was done, which showed a necrotic collection along the left sternocleidomastoid muscle till the sternal notch, which was most likely the abscess. So this arrow over here shows the enhanced structure, which is the abscess present. So the plan was either we can go for conventional laryngoscopy, or we can go for awake fiber optic nasotracheal intubation, or we can go for tracheostomy, or the last resort was cricothyroidotomy. But we had planned for awake fiber optic nasotracheal intubation. This patient was explained about the risk associated and the plan for awake fiber optic intubation. Informed written valid consent was taken. Standby difficult airway cart and tracheostomy kit was ready. Patient had received nebulization of about 2 ml of 4% lignocaine plus adrenaline half an hour prior to surgery. In OT, all the standard monitors were applied. Non-invasive blood pressure, pulse oximeter, 5-lead ECG were connected, and the vitals were noted. As an anti-cyanogogue, we gave injection glycopyrrolate 2 mg, injection dexamethasone 8 mg, and fentanyl 50 mics was given. So we had to anesthetize the nasal airway as well as the tongue and the posterior pharyngeal areas. So nasal decongestion was done with Otrivin nasal drops, that is xylometazoline hydrochloride nasal drops. And the base of the tongue and the posterior pharyngeal wall was anesthetized with 10% of lignocaine, 2 puffs on either side, that is 10 mg with each activation. A fiber optic bronchoscope was checked and 7 mm cuffed endotracheal tube was loaded and passed via right nostril. A lot of difficulty was seen while threading the endotracheal tube as the vocal cords were edematous. So this is how the vocal cords looked. The visualization, we could not see anything. The help was asked for as per the IDA algorithm. Again, the fiber optic was tried, suction catheter was attached and ET tube was passed. And final confirmation with capnography and auscultation was done. Patient was then induced with injection propofol 100 mg, injection fentanyl 60 micrograms and itracurium 50 mg as a muscle relaxant and was maintained on oxygen air sevoflurane with intermittent positive pressure ventilation. Once the abscess was drained, patient developed a severe intraoperative hypotension. So we took right radial artery USG guided and right femoral vein was cannulated. Injection non-adrenaline infusion was started and we tried to achieve hemostasis. Perioperative steroids was administered at the end of the surgery. Patient was mechanically ventilated for 72 hours in the CCU. We shifted the patient to CCU. In CCU, there was no deterioration in saturation and patient was maintaining vitals very well. In between the 72 hours period, one more time the patient got scheduled for a WAC dressing and wound debridement. That was 48 hours after the initial surgery. So again, with the same course, we induced and we had done that procedure as well. Patient was kept on fentanyl and midazolam infusion in CCU. All the bronchodilators, antibiotics, nebulization was given and patient was started on insulin. Now came the call for extubation. So extubation was also a very tedious task in this patient. So we extubated this patient with fiber optic scope in situ. So this was how first we checked the opposite nostril. We checked if the vocal cord edema, the epiglottis and the airway edema had settled. Then with the when everything got settled, then we removed, the leak test was done. When the leak test, when we saw the air or when we saw the expired tidal volume decreased, that time we removed the endotracheal tube with the fiber optic scope in situ. So then the patient was shifted to the ward the next day and observation was done for 5 days in the ward and patient got discharged on day 7. This was the IDA guidelines for unanticipated difficult intubation. So here in the similar way we called for help and we went ahead, and this is for the extubation purpose. So basically deep extubation was done. We can do either with the supraglottic airway exchange catheter or with the fiber optic bronchoscope. And after removal, patient was kept on continuous oxygen supplementation, or we can either keep on CPAP or high flow nasal oxygen support. If, however, had it been the leak test was negative, then we had to delay the extubation. We had to again mechanically ventilate the patient and then again wait until everything settles. Thank you, everyone.